What is up, everybody? CP and SJ with you here for another week of Every Day We're Covering, where we talk the world of sports, wagering, having a good time as we roll on through the end of the 2026 NCAA men's basketball tournament. Women's tournament actually finished up here today as well, and we're down to the championship for the men's tournament coming up on Monday. So we're going to recap Final Four games. We'll preview the championship matchup. We're going to do a little fun recap of both of our squad seasons as well, kind of highlighting our top 5 games we thought for our teams here this season. So have a little fun doing that. And then we'll talk a little Parched Madness as well. We've got some results from the Sweet 16 of our Parched Madness beer bracket. So we'll have that here at the end of the show as well. All right, I'm Chris Parks, SJ Munoz with me as always. SJ, we've had a good run of some fun basketball here. As it turns out, we don't always know things, and one game turned out to be a lot more entertaining than the other, and it certainly wasn't the one that we expected, and I don't think pretty much anybody expected here this weekend.
Well, I mean, we kind of always have a disclaimer, not a disclaimer, but just make mention of it like in passing, but also kind of serious more than not. It's like the games you think it's like, oh, this can't miss. Even when we're talking about more in depth into the football season and making plays there, it's you think on paper this is a great weekend, it ends up not being, and then the opposite thing, like we don't have any good matchups this weekend, and then the games end up being like pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So that was the opposite. We thought, I mean, we're not everybody. There's a big group. Majority of people, if they're honest, thought I'll just get through that first semifinal, we'll get to the second one, and then that's going to be the game of the night. And that was, I mean, if you're a Michigan fan or you had a good amount of cheese on them, you're hell yeah, that was an amazing game. But if you're just watching for entertainment purposes and wanting to like see some competitive event there, that wasn't the case.
No, yeah, it was not. So we'll get to that here in just a little bit, but definitely surprising. As we get started, we always like to talk about what we're drinking and powering us through here the weekend. I'm not, again, I'm going to be kind of boring, I guess, but I couldn't, I don't know, I couldn't help myself the other day because, of course, it's always like you get your new shiny toy and it's like kind of fun for a while. Well, the folks in Iowa, of course, have their new shiny toy in Yuengling being in available in the stores. So I had my first, of course, regular Yuengling lagers on the show last week. So I had to buy a case of the Flight here this week. And, of course, I knew I was going to be drinking, a handful of them watching the games here over the weekend. So always a good sessional beer for that. So that's what I've got. My first official Iowa-purchased Yuengling Flight cans here with me. That's what I'm drinking here today. SJ, what do you got?
I will say that's a toy that doesn't get old very quick because I was still pretty. I mean, when I'm like I can't decide, I'm like I'm just going Yuengling. So that might be. It's a nice problem to have though. You're going to get something good no matter if you do.
Yeah.
Traditional the Flight. Of course, they got like a black and tan they put out there. Even like which I'm going to be drinking a version of, but they put a Kolsch out there too sometimes and a Bach. So they have a few just seasonal varieties. So hopefully you guys get your hands on those. And speaking of Kolsch, that's what I went with tonight. And I think I'm almost certain I've shouted this place out before, but if not, I need to anyways. But it is a Strange Days Brewing Company here in down in the River Market, if you're familiar with the Kansas City area, so just north of downtown. And their Kolsch, they call it 3rd Street, which, like I said, in the River Market, it's like on the facility is like at the corner of 3rd and Oak Street. So basically, it's 3rd Street there. So, but I mean, decent bang, little over 5%. I don't know if it typically does. It's been there a while since I had a pour there, but coming in, a little bit of a tall boy can, 16 ounce here. So that's always nice too, but good place, local place, like to support and definitely make good beers. They're kind of one of those places that it's very, it's limited. They might do 5 or 6, maybe 7 max at one time, and kind of one that tries to perfect a few things rather than having, sometimes it's a bit overload and maybe you don't get the quality. So what they do make is all really good.
Nice. I like that. I like that. I need to. I guess I need to brush up on my KC brewing knowledge a little bit because I was probably real close to that when I was down there in KC where we parked to go to the Big 12 tournament. So I'm gonna have to remember that next time. That might be the how to wrap up the day there. Interesting. It looks like they actually produce a couple of different of Kolsch varieties there from that particular location. So that's right up my alley. I'm gonna have to check that out. And another place that I've also told myself I'm gonna go back to. Apparently they make a Kolsch for Char Bar So hey, well, yeah, all right. Two
You
birds, one
don't
stone,
really
maybe.
need a reason to go there, but yeah, do it if you get one, do it. Yeah, because that's a great place to have some dinner, lunch, or brunch, or whatever you want.
Yeah, all right. So that's what we're pouring down here this week. Hope you have some good beverages along with you while you're enjoying the program, or maybe you're dreaming about what you're going to pick up when the day is through. If you're listening when we're back to the grind, unfortunately, here after the holiday weekend. So hope everybody had a good Easter, enjoyed some time maybe with family, friends, or just had some good food, or just some time to relax. So hopefully it worked out for you in one way or another. We did finally. I don't know. I'm sure it was probably the same for you. Saturday was kind of a crap day weather-wise, and then it turned around. It was a little much better here today on Easter Sunday. So at least we got to see a few rays of sunshine by the end of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, this whatever back and forth is standard of the year, but it seems a bit much this year. Maybe I'm just remembering wrong, but I know it was like about in the 40s after like near 90, a couple days before. So
Yeah.
that's getting to be a bit much. I know it's typical of the season. Everyone says, whatever. I think every state thinks they have the worst weather, and what's always the joke, just wait 10 minutes crap. But either way, like it seems to be a little excessive this year, but maybe it's just one of those years.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not. It has not been. It has not been pleasant back and forth. But hopefully, I don't know. And well, unfortunately, I think the forecast this weekend is much more of the same. It sounds like. But we'll fight through it. We'll get through it, and we'll eventually get to better times. Hopefully. All right, let's dive into these games here in the Final Four. I mean, certainly, I think everybody was waiting for the entree, so to speak, between Michigan, Arizona, and we just thought that Illinois, UConn might be a nice little appetizer, perhaps. But kind of turned the other way around. Illinois, UConn ended up being a pretty decent game. I guess I don't know. As just watching it throughout, though, I never felt like. It never felt like Illinois had the upper hand. Obviously, UConn pretty much led the whole way. And it just seemed like every time it was going to get close enough that you thought that Illinois was going to, maybe they can swing this whole momentum their way. It didn't happen. Like UConn would hit a shot and push it maybe back out to 8. And that just kind of, kept them at bay and made the plays that they needed to down the stretch. Thought they played pretty well as far as like, a lot of guys getting involved too. That was good for UConn. They had multiple players that kind of stepped up and played a good part of the puzzle for them. And it was kind of the same, I guess from my perspective, it's the same story of what I was so frustrated by with Illinois previously. There were times during the game where they got stuck in those same ruts where, it was like, you run the high ball screen and then we're going to stand here for 10 seconds and then decide what we're going to try to do. When you have those big guys that you really want to get involved, and they did at times. And I thought there were a few possessions I saw where it's like, okay, they did a better job of swinging the ball a little bit and getting it going. And I know your perspective maybe missed some opportunities as well at the same time. But pretty good all around game, I guess, by UConn to get the job done.
That was the difference. I mean, I think that Illinois had a chance to do it, but UConn did a better job of, I guess, fending them off or just keeping the momentum on their side when it would get, even tied at one point or just within a couple points, someone would hit a three or they get a steal and get a fast break dunk or something to not only get pushed the lead out, but then you get momentum on your side with kind of a highlight type of player, get an and one or maybe even like a jump ball, something like that. But yet the chances were there, but Illinois didn't do enough, and that did get bogged down. When they went inside, I think they were down about 14 there in the second half, and then they get 2 inside buckets to cut it to 10, and then the next thing you're chucking threes again, in the next possession. You just whatever works, and I get you want to get. I mean, thank God he's more of a drive to the hoop type of guy. You want to get Wagler as many looks as possible, and he's going to do whatever he wants, and he kind of kept him in the game for the most part, but it is just kind of it's almost like a kind of when you say in football, draw it up in the dirt and just whatever go and kind of say chuck it up, someone's down there, the joke, the meme that's got to be. But that sometimes they're just like go beat your guy one-on-one, which in some it works for some teams and in some cases. But when you get to this point of the season when everybody's really good and you kind of have to do something different because a lot of times you say, well, we're willing to give up, the guy's going to get his points or whatever, but you're not going to let him do it. You're still going to make it hard on him. But you also have to have another option or 2 options or even, 4 or 5 down the line of, things that you can do more. And it kind of blows my mind. Like, I don't know if he just doesn't listen to his dad because that's typical of the thing. But it's like, man, I understand this has different games, Djokovic, but dude, he cannot make free throws at all, like to save his life. And those were big misses at those point in time. It's like, just go out, I'm sure your dad can teach you a thing or two. Like, he didn't miss from 3, let alone free throws. I'm like,
Yeah.
how bad of a shooter he is with those genetics. I mean, it's not, whatever. It is what it is. It's not like that's why they lost this game, but it does kind of blows your mind thinking that you have kind of all that, not only the natural ability, but coach, ability to learn from one of like the best shooters in league history. I mean, I'd go into the hoop though. His dad can't hold a candle to him,
Yeah.
but he cannot freaking. And it's just a mental thing, obviously, because he has the ability. It's just that always sticks out to me when I watch him. Like, it's good when you're playing against him. You're like, he ain't gonna make both these, but when you want him to, you're like, it's kind of the other side of it. But the supporting cast wasn't there enough to help. And what they barely got to 60. I mean, it was looking like it was going to be in the 50s for most of the game on their end. So that kind of shows you just how off they were offensively, and that's how they were throughout the season. They put up 90, 2 or 3 games in a row, and then they go and play a road game against Maryland or something and equal out like 68, 64, that type of thing. And I think everything goes back to for them, at least looking at their perspective, is the the inconsistency offensively, and to us at least, we're kind of both in agreement that that's more of a strategy thing than talent, because they no doubt have the players.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you look at how it played out, and you're right. Wagler kind of kept him in it. He goes 20-8, and then Ivisic, Tomislav, the more skilled scoring of the twins, he has 16 points, 7 rebounds. But then your next highest scorer was Stojakovic off the bench with 9, and then nobody else was even really close to that. So, and on the other side, UConn, you've got 3 of the starters that finished in double figures, one that's just a point away in Karaban, and then you've got 2 others that chipped in 7. So you've got, pretty good balance across the board there for them. And yeah, you're not relying on just those 1 and 2 guys. And, sometimes it's not necessarily either that you didn't get the opportunities or you didn't look to those guys or whatever. It's just that they didn't hit the shots when they had the opportunities either. And I think that was part of it, because you look at the total numbers, and pretty miserable shooting outing for the most part for, both teams overall. But on Illinois' side, you're going 6 of 26 from 3. I realize you're trying to chuck a few up there at the end too, but man, that's a pretty rough outing. And then 19 of 56, they only shot 33% for the game overall. So it's a little bit of a tough one to. Tough time to have that happen for sure. But like you said, it seemed like they had their moments throughout the season where that kind of was the case. They just weren't consistent enough all the time.
Well, you have to do, what you're good at. And I think, the 3-point, I guess their attack from outside the arc is a part of their game, but also it is, worth pointing out, I think, with these Final Fours, ever since they've moved to these, football first venues, the shooting's just not the same, because it's not like shooting on a basketball court. It's totally different. And, I think when it first started, everyone's like, it's no big deal. If you can shoot on a hoop, you can shoot on a hoop. And then you get on the court and look at it, and then you're like, oh, this is like totally different. Like, it's got a huge, like, whatever, like
cavern.
It just doesn't even look like you're shooting at a hoop. And I mean, I guess it looked good because they won or whatever, but they had the little sideline, update of Michigan taking a hoop out to the, in the football stadium, the big house, and shooting around. I was like, well, I mean, I don't know, maybe we should have done that before this week if you really thought you were going to be there, because that was the whole point of that thing. We knew we'd be in the Final Four, so just this week we started shooting. Well, if you knew you're going to be there, you should have done it all season long, but whatever. That's I guess that's maybe looking too deep, but it is. I mean, I think it's a fact. You probably could we could, get in the stats we want to, but just anybody who watches games, the shooting's not the same. And when you're a shooting team, I think just doesn't matter. I guess this could maybe overcome that fact. Is you get a layup or easy floater or something, just get a couple shots in, and then just shooting just becomes a little bit more of like, oh, that's what they always say, is get going, see it go through the hoop a couple times, even if it's not your typical 27-foot 3-pointer deep logo shot, but just get something to go through the hoop and get your confidence going, and then it's a little bit easier than you just start chucking from 3 on a court that's not designed like a typical basketball court.
Yeah. So that's how the first one played out. Of course, UConn does win 71-62, ends up being the final to advance on to the championship. They definitely seem to have a lock on figuring things out when it comes to this tournament and playing their best basketball. They've certainly proved that over the last 4 seasons. And it's one of those deals, too, and I think I talked to my wife a little bit about this over the weekend too. She's, not much into it or whatever, but I, go on my little rants and she'll listen. And we're talking about, just coaches' behavior and stuff. And of course, I'm not the biggest fan of Dan Hurley and how he conducts himself. And I think a lot of people agree with that. But at the same time, we talked about, it seems like this is the case in almost every sport. Like if you end up being really good at something or the best of the best, it's almost like you got to be a little bit nuts at the same time and a little bit just weird. And he's certainly that. And I think, the thing I'll give him credit for is like, yeah, I think he's bananas and I think he's out of line half the time. But I'm sure that the atmosphere that he does create in those practices certainly pays dividends when it comes down to the end of the season. They've been in those pressure situations. They're not afraid of what anybody's going to say to them because they probably have heard the worst of it while they're just out there with their buds. It's proven to test their mettle enough, I think, that they don't seem to flinch in those big moment type of games.
I do think, it wouldn't be something that ever been admit, but in certain instances, and maybe this isn't the case, but I do think the coaches that are kind of, it's almost like part of their like way to like just put all the bad negativity on me and I'll handle it, and you guys just worry about playing basketball, whatever the sport is. So I think that's maybe a subconscious way of like that's how I'm gonna kind of support the team when I'm not out there. And I don't know about Tim or whatever. Like he loses, he gets knocked out in round of 32 2 or 3 years in a row, or 2 out of 3 next, and we'll be like, he was just
true.
So right now it's like everyone's up his
it's easy
ass.
To praise what he's
I think it's a very, he walked into a hell of a like that's a great program. They've got a lot of tradition, and there's good players that you can pick from within that region. You're like the short train rider from New York City, and everyone knows how kind of the storied history of basketball players that come out of there. So, but he's also earned all the accolades as far as on the court that he's received. It's just one of those guys where it's not like you're going to be like, I hope well on this guy, and you don't ill will against him either, unless you're like psychotic. But you don't want to be that same type of guy. But you're also, it's hard to be like, I'm really rooting for this guy. He's put in all the hard work, which he had, but it's you kind of it's there's a little bit of character that kind of goes a long ways too. So and I don't know that the Michigan coaches, he may be like more docile, but as far as just throwing money at a roster, I don't necessarily think that's like a great accomplishment either. So I'm not like, oh, this is so amazing. Like they're a great team, but it's also what's the blue chips best team money can buy, at least this year, and everybody can do it, so it's not illegal. It's different than that movie. I'm not trying to say that, but it's also, I don't know, it doesn't quite, but that's the way the game is. So it's not the same, it's different. So I'm not it's not a complaint. It's just that you got to be realistic about it too. I don't want to sit here and cry that that's the reason the game's ruined or changed, but you also can't be like it doesn't affect it, because it really does.
It's a different way.
But as far as Hurley goes, though, back to kind of wrap that up, like obviously a good coach and probably one of the best of his generation and era, but it's just he is one of those. As many, and every time you're like, I've seen it, you kind of be like, I should be, but when it like pressed his forehead to the ref, like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
The weird thing is, like, I don't think it was like anything, like it wasn't like an aggressive move in a vine, but in most cases, you make contact with an official in any way, it's an automatic technical. But I guess maybe him and the guy were good. Who knows what said or was going on? It was weird though to see that. Because well, you see it online and you're like, this is some AI bullshit or somebody fake thing. I'm like, no, that really happened. Like that was legit. So yeah, he's just a weird dude. But he's successful as a coach, but definitely a weird dude. And I do think kind of they are very just kind of you watch them playing, you're like, they don't look that good, or they just the talent, it doesn't jump off at you as far as that, but they know how to kind of, in these situations, like you said, they know how to win when it matters, and that's all you really need. Like, who cares about how when if you of course you gotta have talent. It's not like they have good players and great players, but still they're not like they're I mean, they're not like you look at, even Arizona and Michigan, those other teams, you're like, damn, how are we gonna stop these guys?
Mm-hmm.
That's not the way you look at them, but you're like, as a team, you're like, these guys are create a lot of problems, and
Mm-hmm.
then when it comes to crunch time, they just don't make really mistakes, really.
Yeah, they play their roles really well. That's a part of it. And yeah, I'm not sitting here saying that I think a lot of what he does is wrong, and I don't like it. And there's better ways to go about it. But at the same time, it's one of those annoying things in sports in general. Like there's always those people that do things that irritate the shit out of you, but they are successful somehow.
Yeah.
And he's got a little bit of that going on, obviously.
Well, I mean, even just with Indiana football deal kind of catching fire, he's not a likable guy either, Cignetti. But you still, at least we're of sound mind where we're like, we don't necessarily like the people, but you can admit that they're good at their job.
Yeah, they're doing what they're supposed to.
Those are different conversations. Yeah.
So that was game one, and then we got to game two, and it didn't turn out to be much of a game, unfortunately. Michigan is on one hell of a heater here. SJ, I guess I'll let you give first crack analysis here. You were on the right side of this one. I didn't see this coming, but Wolverines played very well.
I mean, ass whooping is about the best way to describe it, and it was. You kind of started off like your teams get on these like quick runs, and what I don't even remember the exact score, but it had to have been like, I don't know, 12-4 or something.
Yeah, it was like 11-3
or something. Yeah, they just got out quick and like, okay, some a lot of teams get hot, get a couple shots, and you kind of then and Arizona looked like they might kind of you cut it to 8 or 6, 7, get back within it. You're like we're within, and then just no matter whatever Michigan did was like working like to perfection, and then Arizona. I don't know if it's could probably, everything combined, but didn't play well, pressure of the moment, and then you're playing against a really good team. It all kind of just, an avalanche, kind of, and once they got behind, not only was, Michigan just, I meant to you, like, there's a couple times, like, they just, and I don't think it was a foul, I think it was a clean play, just, like, ripped the ball from the Arizona player's hands, like, just said, give me that, and just don't go the other way. When that type of stuff's happening, it's like, obviously, it just, everything's coming too fast at you, and you just don't know really how to respond, and then you get maybe a play here or there, and then next thing you know, the freaking get a couple threes, and then that freaking I think one of the most like I mentioned before, so I'm not acting like they're like whatever you want to call it, pieced together. They're not like hurting for talent. But that Mara, man, he's one of the most impressive guys to me because not only is he big, like he can move and he knows how to play. Like even every time I've seen him play, I'm like, I understand there's players that are probably better, more athletic, but he's one that you're just like because not only is he like just a presence in the middle where it's like you're not gonna come in that lane and just chunk some junk up, or you're gonna have to think about it and it's gonna adjust your shot. And then the offensively, freaking it's like he looks like he has no space on a lob and somehow he sneaks it in there like perfect. Just off the glass and then even he was going through guys. His power in the ball into the hoop. And so to me, like that's like the player for me. I'd be like, that's kind of the guy I'd be like, really be like impressed by it. Of course, they're all really good, but that's a guy that I'm just every time I watch him play, I'm like, man, that's kind of a once in a lifetime find because either they're, if you get somebody that size, typically maybe they can stroke it a little bit these days because everybody can shoot. But to have that all around game that he has and be able to get up and down, it's not like he's doesn't one of those guys like 5 or 10 minutes like tapping out, pulling, shaking their jersey, be like I need a minute. Like you don't need to come out unless it's foul trouble. So to me, and of course that was a UCLA, man. They kind of they've had some players on that roster that have come through there and not stuck around and had success elsewhere. So that's I guess that probably sticks, especially being within the conference. That's a tough pill to swallow. But yeah, he's the player that I'm really like, man. But yeah, Michigan looked really. I guess the only bad thing was that injury, but didn't matter in that game to Lindenberg. But I think that could factor in a little bit. But I don't know. I guess you probably need play game time thing like that. But it sounds like solo ball might not be 100% either. So some type of an ankle sprain or something to that effect. So I guess maybe those two can cancel out. But that's just watching the way they played and the fact that I think you'd give Connecticut maybe a little bit better of a, maybe more. We'll get into, probably particulars later, but initial glance, if it was like a 3 or 4 day break in between games, but as hot as Michigan's playing right now,
Mm.
the sooner they play, the better for them and the worse for their opponent.
Yeah. That was my initial couple of things, and of course, I'll kind of approach this too from the other side, since it's a team that I've watched a lot in Arizona. But number one, bad day to have a bad day, and number two, yeah, Michigan is just. Sometimes teams are hot, and they are hot. They have got it going right now. I mean, you obviously always want to maximize your team at the right time, right point of the season, and they found a way to do that. Which I mean, I don't know that everybody believed after they lose to Purdue in the Big Ten championship, and you're thinking, well, they show they're susceptible here. But man, once they stepped on that floor for the tournament, it's been nothing but just go. And there's nobody that's even tested them yet here at this point. And they've played obviously very good teams. So I think just sometimes you get in the right groove, and they are in it right now. And I think that what magnified that in that game was, even with the things that went the way that Arizona probably would have wanted them to early on, still didn't matter. Because I'm sitting there thinking, well, hell, this is perfect scenario. Yeah, you didn't get a good start, but they get 2 early fouls on Lindeborg. He has to go sit. You're thinking, oh, star player's already out. They got a couple other guys that picked up a couple already, so you're way ahead in the foul game. And you got to think, okay, they're going to come, their shot's going to come around. That's going to be okay for them. And then, of course, later than the injury to Lindeborg when he's back out there, and you think, oh man, that's another big blow. Maybe in the second half can be a different story here for him. He can't go at all. But it didn't matter. It just the Michigan just kept trucking along. And you mentioned Mara. I mean, how the hell do you stop a guy when he's playing like that? He's 7'4" and has that kind of skill. That's just unbelievable. And the thing is I've seen Krivos play some games earlier this year for Arizona where he's looked kind of almost that way, just because he's pretty skilled at scoring inside. But he looked like he was, no match for Morrow, just because of the way his confidence was going. And like you said, he went through a couple guys a couple of times, got like and ones. It's like, what the hell is this? Like, you don't expect that. Yeah, and a couple, of course, of those lobs, it was just like, you're beating the heart right out of them as this game goes along, and they just kept doing it. So yeah, hats off to Michigan. And I think too, the other thing I thought about too, from a fan's perspective, because if we're watching our own team, you always you watch a game like that and you're always kind of thinking, okay, when are we going to be able to make a little pushback here? And then you're just like, well, they made everything. They made everything, which they did to a degree, but also there also is an element of that you played into, because Arizona let them make those shots early, and then once they got that confidence, and of course they got a couple of those lob dunks, and like then they're just feeling free, and you could tell like everybody was just ready to let it loose whenever they needed to, even Cadeau, who started not shooting the ball well, he started knocking them down in the second half. You had the McKinney, is that his name? Yeah, he knocked down a couple.
And even Gale's dunking on people, yeah, he's bringing the storm right in his face.
Yeah. So and I think so. I think that's you got to blame yourself too, because you let it get to that point where everybody's confident, and then that's why they continue to make them. Granted, the other team still has to keep doing that. And Michigan did. So, yeah, a hell of a run. They end up shooting 47% for the game, 44% from three. And hell, they really didn't even need the threes for the most part to make the difference. And yeah, I was just kind of waiting, like, is Arizona going to make a little run here at some point? And they could never do it. They had their chance, I thought, beginning of the second half, and missed a bunch of shots that were wide open early on, and they weren't making their shots. And then, yeah, you just knew that the story was written pretty early in this one.
There's not really a way to, I guess track it with, unless you actually chart it yourself. But, you look at the 3-point numbers and you're like, oh, they hit a bunch or whatever, or, just the game in general, but this game, for instance, too. And you're like, they're never going to shoot, they just shot really good with three. But part of that too, like you said, going to the opponent is, I mean, I'm just think of all the ones I'm just thinking of in the game, watching it like, dude, that's open three. That's an open three. That's an, it's one thing if if you're all over them and they're just draining your face, you can't do anything about it. What are you going to do? But I mean, there is ample open shots in the first half, let alone as the game went on. And that's more on you. Like maybe you're willing to give it up, but then you also have to be like, well, that was what we wanted them to take, and they beat us. So you just got to admit that then if that's the defensive strategy. I don't think that it probably totally was. You probably definitely want to like minimize, the off the dribble type game, the pick and roll, because like, that's what getting the lobs. But you also don't want to just leave with as many shooters as they have. You don't want to just leave them wide open. I guarantee that's not the game plan, and that's what was happening. Don't get to do this often, so I guess I might as well do it. But friggin' actually at halftime, the crew, whatever they're called now, whatever, because I don't know who they're with. I guess they're working for Turner still, but or CBS, whoever the hell it is. But the friggin' Barkley and Smith and them, they actually made a good point of fact that because someone, they pulled up a thing about someone's like, oh, Cadeau's having the best whatever
2 for 14 game, yeah.
But they do make a point where it's like, well, yeah, he's not making them, but you have to keep the defense honest. And he was taking good shots. He just wasn't hitting early. And then watching the second half, I think he hit 3 threes in a row and then another layup in between there. So that was like that's actually a legitimate basketball. I almost had to like rewind and listen to it again. Like they're actually talking about like basketball instead of some Photoshop thing they've done or someone trying to talk about their kid should get in the NCAA tournament for his great coaching job he did, that type of thing. But that's actually was a great point they made. And of course you don't want to be, chucking up bullshit and just shooting from everywhere. But if it's like a legitimately good shot, you have to keep the defense honest if you're, a scoring threat. And he is like some players, it's like, leave them open. No, don't shoot. It's like the player like, no. And then they hit it like, oh, good. But don't ever fucking do it again. Like one time only. But obviously he's a scorer, so he was just having an off first half, but he has enough weapons on that team where you can afford to miss a few, so it's different. But still, it wasn't that bad of a first half. And how many assists and rebounds and steals did he have? Like he was. It wasn't like he was hurting the team even with that bad shooting first half.
No. Well, and if you played, a lot of us are listening here, and of course us here on the show. If you played the game, you also understand that sometimes like. Even a semi good shot can still lead to a good result, even if you don't make it. Like how many times you play in pickup and you're like, you miss it, but somebody's right there, gets a rebound and puts it back up. Like sometimes you just have to create something to happen. And obviously they have the guys inside that can go get the ball and put it back in. So that's part of it too. I think sometimes as long as it's a decent look and you're not just, hucking it up, then good things can happen. And they certainly were for them. There was one point this was still in the first half, I'm sure of it. And it was a play that you wouldn't think be the one that like, oh, that determines the game. But like when I saw it, I just thought Arizona's not going to win this game because it was when they were early on. It was probably a little bit past midway through the first half, I think, and you could tell they were starting to get frustrated. And Jaden Bradley took one on a right-handed drive down the right side of the lane, and he just like trucked the defender, in like no regard for what he was doing, And I was like, okay, they've lost the ship here, because he's just mad. He's just trying to get to the hole any way possible, get a call because he wasn't going to do anything other than get a call, and it goes against him. And I just thought, okay, that's the game there.
If I'm thinking of the same play, I think it was Cadeau that drew the charge.
Yeah,
too. And
right.
I think it was his third foul too there. So I think he had to sit for a minute. So I was like, you're not only are you made a dumb play, now you're like complicating matters, but now you got to sit.
Yeah,
and it was, of course, frustration. Even in the second half, it was who's the not Pete, but the other big guy for Awaka, is that right?
Awaka, yeah.
Yeah, he literally put like forearm shiver.
Oh yeah.
Cheddar and just he sent him flying, and I was like, well, pretty obvious. He didn't argue it or anything. But
No.
Like, that was. The game was. That was the second half, and it was over by then. But you could tell he just like, I'm gonna get me a little.
I'm gonna get a shot in here.
Give me a little skin in the game here and get my money's worth. So, but yeah, that was kind of a little more to the extreme on that one, but similar mindset where you're just like, we got nothing to that. I'm going to let some frustration out, which, it's understandable. I don't blame him for doing it. It's just, that was kind of like the signs like, oh yeah, we're officially done now. Just run the clock out.
Yep. So I will say, I do still think that Arizona is a much better team than that game, showed. But it does also show, I think, just how well Michigan is playing right now, and they're doing it right at the right time to get themselves to this title game.
I usually hate like the stupid quotes and cliches and all that stuff, which who doesn't, everybody. But like, I mean, when you say, I think it rings really true for this tournament. It's like only one team like ends their season like on a good note or happy, and it's just like when you think about it, you're like that's. I mean, they had a hell of a season, good team, but it doesn't. In the moment, you're like, who gives a fuck? Like we just, like the season was worthless. Like, but then if a few days later, but it is a little tougher too when you're in some of these schools where kind of been a little bit of a drought, even since for them to make the Final Four had been quite a while.
Yeah.
Considering how good a program it's been, and then you're kind of it's right there for you and kind of slips through your fingers. You feel like, even though I mean I know the score wasn't close, but who knows? You play again, something different happens. It's a little tough, but I mean that's the good and bad of the tournament. Why it's so why it's so popular, and why people that don't even really watch during the season kind of come around for this, because it's just that I don't know, it's like those car crash you can't look away from type of thing. It's like it's obviously not that dire, but it's like, man, this is like the emotional roller coaster of like freaking the highs and the lows is like right there within like from what end of November, early December, all the way through March. You put all this work in, and then it's gone before you know it.
Yep. And yeah, well, and I mean, I think for both teams too, we kept hearing the narratives, and we'll hear it now for Michigan as well. But yeah, I think it'd been 29 years, I think, since a team out west had won a title, and that was Arizona back in '97. And then of course it's been 25 years since a Big Ten team has won a title, and that was Michigan State back in 01. So yeah, I mean, it's been a long road for both sides, and I mean, I certainly think as we now look at this matchup, we probably think that drought is going to end, but it'll be interesting. So we've got Michigan and UConn for the championship on Monday night. And that, of course, will be a tip-off at 7:50 p.m. here Central Time is what we've got. The line started out a little higher. I think it's dropped a little bit. I initially saw 7.5 Michigan being favored. Now I'm seeing 6.5, so it's come down a point. 144.5 I'm seeing right now as the total here in this one as well. Certainly just in initial thoughts, I thought before the second game started, like whoever wins this game I think is going to easily win the championship game. Now I'll probably back off a little bit on that, just the easy part of it, because you never count out a team that has that experience of being there before. But the way that Michigan is playing right now, it's just like, who the hell's going to stop them? And I'm not going to say it's going to be this UConn team. So I think Michigan does roll. That's an interesting line though too. Like I don't know. I mean, I guess I do feel like though at some point it's going to break open. I think UConn's maybe a kind of team that has a chance to keep it interesting for a little while because of that experience. But can they do it for 40 minutes? I wouldn't say so, and I would say that Michigan probably pulls away, wins by a good, I'm going to say 10 to 15 by the time the thing's over. So I'd be pretty comfortable with betting them on that line. But it is interesting that it's that high in a national championship game, I guess.
I mean, anything can happen, and it's not, I guess, out of the realm of possibility. But as far as logically looking at it and what would most likely happen, I'm with you there. I just don't see. I think that, I mean, 6.5, 7, wherever you get it. I think that's honest. I was surprised it was low. I thought it might be like a 10, but just because it's a championship game, I mean, I was kind of glad to see that. I was like, oh, that's good news there, because I think they could cover that number fairly easily. And then I guess maybe you even want to pair it with the overs for the fact that you got, it's hard to see them not scoring 80 minimum. I mean, they scored 90 every game in the tournament.
Yeah. What changes your mind
so
now?
Like, you get 80 to 60, and you're right close to there, or in 85 to whatever 68 that gets some garbage points. I just don't. There's not anybody that really matches up well with Michigan. There's only been a couple games this season where they've had struggles or kind of had to really battle all the way through 40 minutes. So you got to go with that, whatever stretch of 40 games compared to maybe a miracle there. And I just think you'd have to have a little bit. You'd almost have to have like a game changer type of player on the other side to kind of overcome that. And because I mean, I think what's their kind of been their mantra all year, I guess, is they feel like they have like 9 starters on their team that just kind of rotate in as the Michigan where they attack it. And I mean, it's not far from the fact that maybe not 9 starters, but they go about 9 to 10 deep. It's pretty hard to match for any team that's. I mean, at least quality wise. I mean, you might play 8 or 9 too, but you're not having the same quality of player that they have, and that's after losing a guy from blew out his knee, their backup point guard. So I mean, and they're still rolling pretty good earlier in the season. So that's just hard to. Of course, we're gonna watch and hopefully we get something good, but it's hard to see them to not kind of running away with it here. Maybe I guess best case scenario in your mind is hang with them for the first half, and then maybe as the game goes on, it just kind of pulls away. There in the second half.
Yeah, I'm with you too on the total. I mean, I guess the only reason I think maybe it's sitting that low is because UConn hasn't given up a huge number yet in this tournament, but I think that's largely a product too of who they've matched up against. I mean, they did give up 70 whatever it was to Duke, and that's obviously a decently good scoring team. But the way Michigan's playing right now, you got to expect they're going to do better than that. So, but yeah, the other teams that they played, not necessarily known to like just shoot the lights out of the ball. Michigan State, obviously Illinois was not. I just think it's more of a matchup thing rather than because you saw during the Big East season they let up some big numbers. I mean, I think if I'm remembering correctly, I'd have to go back and look at the schedule. I haven't, but when they lost to Creighton, I mean, didn't Creighton score like 90-some points in that game?
If it wasn't there, it's pretty close to it.
Yeah,
so yeah.
So I think I just think that obviously the way this Michigan team's playing, they're gonna put up some buckets. UConn will do enough, to stay close and get that way over that number. I think.
Yeah, the research team has 91-84. We got some intel on that. But yeah, I mean, to give up 91 to a team that was probably one of their worst years in recent memory, but more of that to come in my opinion, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, and I mean, you drop a game. I mean, I believe in one instance here there. I mean, it was a lower scoring affair, but you also drop a game to Marquette. So they've had some stinkers.
Yeah.
I mean, St. John's had a good end of the year, but you lose to them by 20.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just getting boat race. So yeah, there's some I guess there's some instances where you might be like, if they have a game like that and don't, I mean, because they're gonna have to play whatever A++, the best game of their lives, basically, and then hope Michigan has like a C or C- game.
Yeah.
And then it's gonna be close then.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, just looking at the on face value, a lot of things happen. Who knows? Another injury, someone gets in foul trouble, that all changes. But just if we're talking full strength with what we know now, it's just hard to see any other thing happening besides that.
Yeah. And obviously we don't know until things happen and you see them. And I think that was definitely like a big eye opener here this last round because, you felt like Michigan was playing really good, but you weren't certain about who they had beaten so far. But I think it goes to prove that, they're playing pretty damn well. Makes me feel a little bit better about my team falling short because they would have got the next game and probably had the same result that the team that beat them ended up with. So it is what it is. When a team's hot, they're hot. And that's what Michigan is right now. I don't think there's a lot of us that are happy about that school potentially racking up another national championship in any sport, but it is what it is.
We know the sanctions or the violations are coming soon after. That's kind of the par for the course there. Yeah. So at least if it is success, it'll be a short time frame there, and something else will happen. So I guess that's the only solace that we would have there.
Yeah, we'll have to be on Dusty May watch, make sure any legal things don't start popping up here.
Still, that North Carolina job, there hasn't been much talk about that. So, get some of these scoring, maybe next year when Self finally decides to retire from Kansas and, go down there and cause some trouble down there before you move on. Who knows? Like, whatever. Like, coaches move around like people change socks.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that is what we've got here for the Final Four and setting up for the national championship. Hopefully, it's an interesting. At least we can hopefully have some interesting parts of the contest to watch. And who knows? Maybe you find some kind of wacky other prop bet that you're going to be rooting for rather than just the game result.
It might be the way to go in this case because just value wise, it's you may get a little more bang for your buck there.
Yeah. So as we move on, well, I guess as we kind of get close to putting a bow on the basketball season, obviously we'll talk about the title game the next time we are with you. But we did want to kind of take a moment to just do a little look back here for our two teams. Obviously, as we've gone through the college basketball season, well, and the football season for that matter, we always kind of break down the teams that we follow most closely and have been fans of for our lives, of course. What we thought some of their best moments were along the way. So we're going to do that, a little breakdown and kind of top 5 games of the season here for Iowa State and Nebraska. By the way, a little congratulations there to Mr. Hoiberg. I did see he got the AP Coach of the Year nod, which was, I think, well-deserved. Obviously, accomplishing something that has never been accomplished at a school does give you a good look, but he certainly had one hell of a run with the team. And even, I think also people forgetting the fact that he expected to have another guy on the floor with him this season that would have been an impact player too. So he did a good job.
Yeah, at least one, and then one that really never got to see the court in a transfer, a 7-footer no less. So that would have been nice.
Mm-hmm.
But so we talked about some of the high guys. But yeah, of course I was hoping that would get that recognition. But you just and all these awards going. I guess it's always subjective, but I think it was at least you can make arguments for other people or say, this guy, maybe that guy, but I think he did enough to warrant it. So it was good to see, and I think deservedly so. It's a little tougher with the history and not only kind of when we talked about the cash being spent and the roster value did a lot. And I think it was a little bit overblown the fact that how they did have a good amount of talent, but it wasn't maybe high dollar talent.
Mm.
So it's a little different then.
Yeah.
I mean, great honor and also deserving and yeah, it's gonna be going forward. I think it's gonna be a good thing for kind of get that where they start here and then you can just move on and just worry about like not having to say, oh, this never been done, that never been done. Let's just
Yep.
get better and kind of here's the baseline set. Now we can just move forward and not have to bring all this other. But I mean, it was true. And not saying it wasn't a fact, but now you can just move on and focus on winning the games and kind of maybe going even further here in the postseason and grabbing some trophies and hanging some banners. Who knows?
Yep. That's what everybody hopes for. Build that base and continue going from there. But he's certainly done a good job climbing to that point. I think it's probably, I don't know, I guess, we could do this one of two ways. We could go back and forth, but I almost think it's probably more impactful if we're looking at one team at a time here on what they've done throughout the year. So we've both kind of collected our list. I'll go ahead and get it kicked off here with Iowa State first. I think it is obviously still a very historic season, but as far as what was accomplished for Nebraska is more historic. So we'll go with them second here. But as far as potential is concerned, I think this, to me, if somebody were to ask me right now, I think this is the most talented Iowa State basketball team that's ever been put on the floor. They had the highest ceiling. I think they could have done even more, had the injury bug not bitten them at the wrong time again in the postseason. It's happened before, and unfortunately it happened again, and you hate to see an All-American type player not be able to finish out his year. So that's not fun. But I think still what they accomplished over the season is – and making this list also made me appreciate it more because I was looking and it's like, man, those are things that you don't ever do and you don't ever expect to do. So I'll give them a lot of credit for winning some big games. And it started right away, beginning of the season. They got to play in that Players Era tournament out there in Vegas, and they had a good run. Unfortunately, they were one of the teams that won their games and didn't get any money out of the deal because of the way the stupid thing's structured. But they won a game early on, 83-82 over St. John's, and of course at the time didn't really know either team how good they could be. Both turned out to be a pretty damn good season. Had a good end to their seasons. Were very competitive in their games in the tournament. So that was a good one to see to get it started, and the way they played out there, I think, set the tone. The game that I put then at number 4 was win over Kansas at home, 74-56 back on Valentine's Day. That was a payback game because they had kind of lost in similar fashion at Allen Fieldhouse. That was their first loss of the season, just like about a week and a half before that. So good to see, you return the favor, so to speak, and you know that you're on the same level with a team like that if you're playing your best, and they played really well in that game. So that was fun. And anytime you beat Kansas as an Iowa State fan is enjoyable. So that was a good time. The one I put at number 3 on my list was back on December 6th. They went to Mackey Arena and beat the pants off of Purdue, which not a single Iowa State fan saw coming, and nobody saw. I don't think anybody saw coming. Purdue was still very highly regarded. I think, they were still number 1 at the time, and just absolutely beat the crap out of them. 81-58 was the final. It got out of hand, and then Purdue never really made a run in the game. And so I think looking back now, it's even more impressive. I mean, Purdue still finished the season very strong. Obviously won the Big Ten tournament, got to the Sweet 16. They're a really good team. That was a very impressive win. That was one that stands out because of not only the type of opponent you're playing, but where road games are hard anyways, and then to go to an environment like that and do it, you never expect to win, let alone win in a blowout. So that was a sign of exactly what this team, I think, could accomplish. Well, and hell, I mean, you're looking at that. I mean, you never can do transitive properties, but like you beat the pants off of a team that beat the team that we're talking about is like unbeatable right now. And so, it's crazy how it goes sometimes. But, and then the next one I put on the list at number 2 was the game that was 2 days after that Kansas game. It was one hell of a weekend at Hilton because they had the matchup against Kansas, and then they played Houston, who was ranked, I believe, number 2 at the time. It was 2 versus 4. And it was just a great basketball game. I mean, the two teams duked it out. Everybody was making shots. It was shot for shot. Nate Heisey drilled a corner 3 late in the game that ended up sealing the deal for Iowa State. 70-67 was the final. Hell of a win, and set the tone for the end of the season. It was kind of like, okay, end of the year, we know we can beat the best teams. Let's go do it when it counts now here in March. And then pretty odd that a team had a season like this. I'm going to say a loss was the best game of the year, but it's hard to say that there was a better one than that Arizona matchup in the semifinals of the Big 12 tournament, because, again, it was a very similar type of game to the way that Houston game went, where both teams were just making shots. They're trading blow for blow. Lead went back and forth. And I guess that's the Arizona team that I expected to see the rest of the way, and they obviously didn't have that here this weekend. But still a lot of talent across the board. It's a last-second shot that beats you, and you were playing pretty good defense. But again, another proving point, I think, that you can be right there with the best team, one of the best teams in the country, and have your chance to win the game. It just came up a little bit short, but nothing to be mad about, in my opinion. So 82-80 was that final. So that was my list. And again, going through that makes you appreciate what your team accomplished, because there's some pretty damn good ones that a lot of other teams didn't do that had the same chances in previous years.
Yeah, that was kind of the thinking with this exercise, because we're to the point now where it's been a couple of weeks and you're finally saying like, it was a fun ride, especially with, I mean, you've done the song and dance a few times, but it's like, man, this is crazy. Hopefully he gets to do it again. I don't want it to be a one and done type of thing, but it was it be like it was a hell of a season, but man, it's you're so close but so far away. It's just the way the tournament goes. I thought you put that 132-point spot on Alcorn on there. That's a lot of
cool.
that's a lot of points there. And then of course take down that damn Iowa too. So that's I know it's kind of an ugly game, but you get that win's always big. So those are 2 games I saw on the schedule. I tried not to do this, but God, there was too many games there that I was like, I can't literally leave them off. So I did like these 2 tied for 5th.
Okay.
So of course the 21-point win over Creighton was kind of like when,
yeah,
I don't know if you recall, but you came to town there like in August, I think, for a work thing, and we were just like BSing, or maybe I think it was August, somewhere around there, or maybe it was later than that, because we were talking about college basketball for some reason.
Yeah, it was
so
September.
Maybe it was a little bit later in this. Either way, and I was like, I think they actually might be pretty good this year, and I kind of get a little bit run down, but then I was like, okay, and I was like, that's when it started getting serious, and like, oh, they actually do have like maybe better than just like, because I was like, well, maybe they'll sneak in the tournament and be like a 10th seed, or maybe even like up to a 7. But that's when I was like, well, maybe they're actually pretty damn good. So beat Creighton by 21 points, which same thing. Anytime you beat your in-state opponent, it's take that win, and then kind of you see the tide shifting in that series too, kind of taking care of business the last few years, and then their coach, is retiring or going away, so that could be a thing to stay. But I mean, 3 days or yes, Monday, it's like 3 days after that, you go and blast Wisconsin by 30 points. Another team that don't really care for too much in all sports, let alone the basketball. And of course, they've had quite a bit of success, but seems like we've done fairly well head to head. And also, they just had those players where it's like, God, these guys are just assholes, man. Like like that Davidson, whatever his name was, and then even like going back to like Decker and that team, those guys are just Dukin, whatever the hell his name was, the Do You Dukin or whatever the hell that guy's name was, just always like freaking punchable faces. So it was good to kind of blast them out of there. And that was when kind of early in the year, same thing was like you don't know how good either team was. I mean, Nebraska was ranked 23rd at that time coming off that win, but they're like, oh, maybe Wisconsin just sucks this year. But they end up honestly, I thought they were going to make a decent run in the tournament, just kind of got I think they maybe a little bit an overlook factor. Plus, High Point was pretty good. And then just kind of a bad matchup there. So, and oddly, and so that I guess that would be like tied for fifth or whatever. But and then moving to fourth, like same week. This was like you looked at the schedule and especially all
That's like a dream
God,
weekend.
there's so much like negative. This I mean, not even just negative. Just people are just fucking just so freaking like scared of their own shadow. It's like, oh God, we got to play Creighton, Wisconsin, Illinois in the same week, which that's tough. But I mean, to me, it's like as a someone like whenever I look at the schedule, I'm like looking more for like, do you play like whatever sport may be in this is of course Big Ten related because that's what the conference you're in. I'm looking for Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, friggin' I guess whatever in football, I guess you throw Indiana in there now. Like I'm like UCLA, USC, like you want to play these teams in my mind. Like of course it's tough. It's not gonna be easy, but the whole point of like being in these, getting like if you want to get all the accolades of being in these like power conferences, like you're gonna have to beat them anyways.
Yeah.
So why not just play them? So that was a tough week, but oddly enough, they go 3-0 in those games and end up with a buzzer beater, no less. Where I'm sure you probably have heard the radio call people having now. Just even if you don't like the team, I don't care. Like just listen to the freaking Pavelka about passing out from doing it, and he's like inaudible. Especially as like a radio guy, you gotta kind of appreciate that because you understand like the kind of the mind. It's just like he didn't know what he was just so excited. Like you've been in those moments where you're just like going so crazy. Like I don't know what to say. I think he's like the whatever he did mutter that was coherent was like, I'm not gonna make it or something like that. Like it's like a freaking heart attack. But they get the 83-80 win over that. So that was number 4. We'll go over to shift in I guess for some reason these just went in order. I wasn't trying because you kind of were able to bounce around, but I guess just as the season went on, there were some good wins too, like had a pretty good comeback in Indiana, didn't make the list, and pretty dominant wins over Washington, which I mean, Washington thought they're going to be pretty good. They were okay. A comeback from Minnesota, and I even like I thought about putting a loss in there because that Michigan game they played. I mean, they were down Mast and Frager and ended up losing there in the last minute by 3 points. So that was one so that I guess that'd be kind of honorable mention. But I guess I'll stick with the victories and that Friday night game against Michigan State where was ugly. Didn't neither team reach 60? Kind of one of those where you just had to, blood and guts type of affair. Nothing was really going right. And that was like kind of Mast's really strong game until he got going again in the tournament. But that he played really well that night. But kind of the reason that stuck out to me was kind of had a couple of chances to really pull away and weren't able to do so. And then the last second play there was or last few seconds, Michigan. I think one of their big men was driving to the hoop after pump fakes on the 3-point line, goes to the hoop and gets the ball stripped away, and just one of those, those kind of bogus foul calls, and ends up getting the call, and they're down by 2. And of course, go to free throw line, probably going to tie it up, is what you're thinking and watching. And fucking place is going berserk. Of course, they try, and he misses the first one, and it's just like freaking this bedlam in there, and of course ends up, makes the second one, but then can't really do much. Chuck it down the court, and then time runs out because I think there was less than a second left after that. So I ended up holding that one. And then I guess these are kind of backwards, at least for like chronologically. But for number 2, I'll go with that insane win against Vanderbilt. Of course, get you to your first ever Sweet 16, crazy game, and you think like, oh, that was probably like as far as how the game played out, where it's back and forth and. For a while there, I know that was kind of the talk of like that was one of the best games of the tournament to that point.
Yeah.
And even I mean, maybe if you look back now, maybe one of the better games of the tournament overall. Like, just not only was it kind of shot for shot, and you kind of got to keep scoring and making plays. It's not like where you just get a 5-point lead and you're holding on for dear life.
Mm-hmm.
Both teams are making threes or getting to the hoop, but then you get that last second, 2 second, get the layup, and then the friggin' that wasn't even a half quarter. Like he was 10 feet beyond half
Yeah.
court. Like he just freaking no man's land and damn near goes
Halfway
in.
down, yeah.
Yeah, fucking talking about not gonna make it. That was the seconds right there. Because I was like, I didn't even. I would tell you, I looked away. I was like, I can't even watch. I just like, I was like, I'm not gonna look. I'm just gonna listen. And then when everyone started cheering, because that was cool to see. I was able to go down to the, get down there. That freaking that crowd was. I mean, that was one point where you're like, man, that was a pretty cool deal to experience. So yeah, but that was number two. Then the win over Vanderbilt to go to the Sweet 16, and then just because. I mean, I didn't, like I said, I don't want to talk about it again, but it was history and didn't make it, was the fact that the first tournament win, and part of it was being there in person, so that kind of jumped it up to number one. So that has, I mean, it was a great game for Nebraska. They smoked them, but it just, I mean, it wasn't like, oh man, unless you're a fan of the team, gotta watch the game again. It wasn't like an amazing game or anything, but to get that like part of history and then be there, and then just the freaking as many fans that went, because I think that was one of the things a lot wanted to be Oklahoma City or St. Louis, because they thought they could get it. And for me, living in Kansas City, I was like, come on, please, St. Louis. That's a 3-hour drive, like nothing to make there. And end up having to leave at 4 a.m. to get down there, but it was well worth it to experience that. So that's definitely number one, just the first tournament win, and hopefully there'll be many more to come, and hopefully somehow it works out next year where if it's a Sweet 16 type of deal, both our teams are somehow find their way down here to Kansas City, and we'll that who knows, that may be the last show we ever have. If there's any success, might finish this off, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah, I might be doing the Pavelka then. That would be the end of me. I ain't making it. That would be a good time. Yeah, I mean that's and you look up and down the roster too. A couple others that you didn't mention that I do stand out to me. You score over 100 against Oklahoma early in the season. I mean that's a tip your cap kind of thing. And then you got some other wins against teams that are perennially supposed to be the good basketball programs. Win at Ohio State, win at Indiana. You beat Oregon. Those kinds of things, like those are good wins throughout the year. And of course, even you beat the team that unfortunately did get you there and nip you at the end. But yeah, it's a hell of a season, and definitely some good ones to remember. And I totally understand your perspective there on number one for sure. And I think not only, like you said, because you were there, but because of the support that they got, the atmosphere that was created for that, it was also very cool. So yeah, I would still put that Vanderbilt game up there as far as the best one so far in this tournament. Like that was about as good as it gets, and that's what you want to see. That's what everybody wants. That's what we wanted to see the other night with Michigan, Arizona.
I thought we were gonna get,
yeah, and we didn't get it, but those are the games, and that's why that's why I have a game at one that we lost, because it was that kind of game. Like that's what you want. You want your guys making plays and doing the right things, and that was literally like a game where it was just the team with the last possession made
the
one
buzzer
more play.
beater, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like at the buzzer.
At the buzzer, yeah. So it's like you can't be mad about that. It's like just crazy good game. So yeah, I certainly a hell of a season for both programs. Hard to top, obviously, but we hope that they can. I think they've built the right foundation to do so. We know it's as hard as ever in this era to continue it, though. It's like, but I do think that these are two programs that have a better chance of doing that than a lot of others, as far as like some player retention and actually, getting guys to get better for a couple of years with you instead of just leaving. Because I think they'll place, well, number one, they'll get the guys to begin with that kind of want to be there, I think, with a little bit, yeah, the money's part of it, but they also are going to want to be there. And then I think the schools will prioritize those guys too, as far as the money, to make sure that they do stay there with the ones that are leading the way. So I certainly hope that's the case. Again, I know it's hard as ever because everybody's got their bag of cash everywhere. So if you think about it, that every team pretty much in the country can probably snag a guy, for the right price. That makes it pretty damn hard to keep your team of, say, 5, 6, 7 together that you really want to play, and keep them there. So it's be interesting to see how all these teams handle it moving forward. But like I said, I think those are two types of schools that have a better chance than most.
I would say I guess the people that are so, bothered by and all, because, we're whatever, I guess we're supportive of, compensation for what's earned, but also it's not like just, bagman isn't the way you want to go about it. But, for the ones that are just like, so against NIL, it's like, man, go look at some of these teams that and their rosters and what is reportedly to be paid and start putting them together and be like, because I can just think of a few teams that just kept bringing up like how much they paid their roster and failed, as far as like Kentucky and Kansas and like North Carolina and there's all this. I mean, if you start making whatever do a little research and do a little bit of journalistic work and put it out there, like it's that's gonna stick in people's minds too, and be like, maybe even players make double. Start thinking like, man, maybe that's not the best way to go about it. If I care about winning, now there's always people that just money, and that's fine, but you probably don't want those players anyways, or people working for your business. If you're talking about regular life, if you're just in it for the money, of course we all want to get paid to live a comfortable life, but if that's the end all be all, then it's probably not not always the best motivation for that.
Yeah. Well, and another team I think of too is and they probably were even still not totally wrong, but like the BYU situation. Devonsa, you went. I mean, I still think the guy's incredible, and didn't do him any harm having him on the team. But you didn't win. You didn't win tournament. You didn't win in the tournament. So like, what's the point? Like, you spent all that money, and that's what you got. I mean, lots of other teams did a lot less than that, and had better results. So. Yeah, it's all perspective.
And even a different example of like maybe something where it's like you didn't pay a ton, but you kind of were all in on one guys. You look at Iowa, like they made it to the Elite Eight, but now what? In your first year, and with a lot of transfers and stuff, so it's like you kind of set the bar pretty high. So it's tough to keep that there, and you were really relying on one player. So it was. I mean, it worked. They had a good year, and not taking that away from that, but. That's a tough model to duplicate if that's what you want to do going forward. It's not going to be the same way every year. Like you're not going to get a coach to come in that's worked with a guy for 4 years and do the same thing every year. And you're pretty much like, it's your show, take 20 shots to get 20 points. It's fine. So that's not going to work out that way every year.
Well, and I think it's such a unique situation for him too, because you had those guys with you for so many of them, for so long. It's not that they just came, he's been coaching them before. And now they hit the moment where they kind of maximize, what they could do. And obviously did a great job of getting them to that point. But now it's the reset. How do you start over again it's going to be interesting. Doesn't hurt that you had that kind of success to lure some other people to want to come play there, but it's going to be a task to put them together to do so. So it'll be interesting. There's lots of moving parts, obviously, for everybody. But again, good seasons for our squads, and hopefully it's something to build on to continue the success for the future. Before we wanted to finish with you here today, we also wanted to have a little fun giving you an update here on another very important tournament bracket.
Someone say that all that really matters is this bracket.
I will say I'll have to apologize. We kind of drug out the opening round a little bit too long. I should have closed it off and got it rolling with the Sweet 16 a little earlier. So obviously we're going to drag this thing out longer than the actual tournament's going to be. It'll be the end of the week by the time we're done, but that's okay. I think people are they're still happy to talk about this no matter what time of year it is, and no matter when it is a bracket or not. So the Parched Madness bracket here for every day we're covering. We're talking about some of our favorite beers got on this list. So we kind of split it up, and we both picked 16 beers that we wanted to have on the chart. And I think we were both kind of the opinion too that we put plenty of them in there that are kind of some of our favorites, but also try to keep maybe more of a national lure flair to some of them as well. And I even threw in a couple that I thought, well, it probably should be on the list, even though it's not necessarily my favorite. I think a lot of people will vote for it. So we did that. We tried to be fair. We've gotten some interesting results here so far too, I will say, and this is decent feedback too. So we're not just saying two people and they disagreed and that's what it is. But we've had some good upsets in the opening round. That is for sure. Biggest, maybe I know one of the local upsets. I had some feedback from some people, and I don't disagree, but I understand why it happened because I bet there's plenty of people that don't know this beer. The Miller High Life over the Big Grove Easy Eddie didn't go well around my office. I know because it is a popular beer here in the state of Iowa, and it is very good. I think if people had it, they would probably maybe change their mind. But I also get the nostalgia of the old High Life, so I'm not gonna sit here and say that doesn't have its place in the world.
Well, I mean, if you ever had one of the little glass bottles, the champagne of beers like that, it's hard to beat. But I think most of it, like you said, is part of the fact of access and availability.
Yeah.
So if you're like, I haven't tried this, but I've tried that, probably gonna vote for that. But yeah, it's not this isn't a foolproof method. We're just having a little fun.
Yeah. But so yeah,
but I guess what we really should do is get one of each here and just do some sampling on the mics here, and then we really get going.
Then we'd really have a good feedback for you. All right, so we've narrowed it down to the Sweet 16, and we had that voting here the last couple of days. So I'm going to close that off, and we're going to get this down to the Elite Eight. So I'm going to give you the results here of the Sweet 16. So we start off in the hops region, the hops regional. Coors Light and Yuengling Lager were going toe to toe. And the mass-produced consumption wins the battle here. Coors Light is the winner. It advances by a 73% to 27% margin. So Coors Light on to the Elite Eight. It's going to match up against the good old Negra Modelo. The Negra Modelo defeated Stella Artois, and by the same exact margin, 73 to 27%. So kind of surprised there. I thought that might be a little bit closer, but I don't disagree. I love myself a Negra Modelo. So
the people have spoken on that one. I'm on that 73%. That's a great choice. But yeah, it's a little. The other one, same, just access obsessive. We must have a lot of listeners out there in the Rockies. Tapping the Rockies.
That's true.
Yeah.
This is interesting though too, because the one that everybody was upset about has now been taken down. The KC Beer Hefeweizen has defeated Miller High Life here in the Sweet 16. So maybe a mild upset there in the Yeast Regional. 73% to 27, same margin. So KC Beer is the winner. Hefeweizen moving on, and that's the local boy regional flair. That might be our Cinderella story right there.
I can't disagree with that one either. Yeah, that seems a little bit. But yeah, that's. I was, it's one of those things. Like you wouldn't know how many people have tried it that they're going to vote on it. So in this case, they were correct in my mind.
Yeah, and it will match up against now. This Sweet 16 battle to me is a Final Four battle in my book. But the Toppling Goliath Pseudo Sue was taken on Yuengling Flight, and I love both of these beers, so this is pretty hard for me to vote on. And I'm actually kind of surprised. I mean, I will say that most people have seen, probably, if you're a beer person, you've seen Toppling Goliath somewhere because they've gotten national recognition for some of the stuff that they do, even though it is a small town Iowa brewery. But the Pseudo Sue wins a very, very tight battle, 55 to 45% ends up being the difference here. So Pseudo Sue advances over the Yuengling Flight. Man, that's tough. That's a hard one to determine there. But the people have spoken, so we got the tiebreaker there. Then we move on to the Malt Regional. Buffalo Sweat has no problem demolishing the Deschutes Mirror Pond Pale Ale. So Deschutes gets into the next round, but they get destroyed by the good old Tallgrass Brewing. Oddly enough, the brewery doesn't exist anymore, but it's been bought out by other people that just brew the recipe because it was so good. 91% to 9%, so pretty sound defeat there for the Deschutes. And then that will match up against the Corona Sunbrew. The Corona Sunbrew defeats the Confluence Southside, which actually is one of my favorite beers, so I'm a little disappointed in this, but I can see why. I can see, again, the mass availability, and if you like your sweetness, you like the Corona Sunbrew, and it is a good one. 55% to 45%, so it was a close battle, but the Sunbrew moves on.
Yeah, that's a new kid on the block too. That hasn't been out that long either, but must I guess made a name for itself early.
Yeah, that's a new one. The barley region, we're gonna go Boulevard Wheat Advances over Pilsner Urquell, 64% to 36%. So another decent margin there. Boulevard Wheat, of course, widely known. I mean, been around as one of the original kind of craft beers, so to speak. When the Blue Moon Boulevard wheat craze started back in the day. And then it'll match up against this. I would think most people probably would consider this an upset. But the Boulevard Tank 7, so it's going to be an all Boulevard Elite 8 matchup. Tank 7 defeats Guinness. Tank 7, 64% to 36%. So I'm a little surprised.
They have to play that at Kemper Arena, I think.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. Yeah. What's the one? Hy-Vee Hall or whatever they call it down there.
It's Hy-Vee Arena now.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah,
we want to know it as Kemper still. Yeah,
it's right next door to the place. So they got to play it there. That'll be a good battle. Which Boulevard beer do you like better, the wheat or the Tank 7?
I mean, do you want to have a few and relax, or do you want to just get messed up?
Yeah, you want to have two and
you got to make sure
fall on your ass, and good stuff. So that's what we've got here into the next round. Again, we'll put that up here for you, and then you'll be able to vote on the Elite Eight. So we'll give that a couple of days, and then we'll narrow it down to the Final Four, and then, of course, then we'll get to that championship battle here. So we're going to go a couple days each of these rounds throughout the week to get you a chance to vote, and then we'll keep moving on to see who the big winner is. But we've had some good results here so far, interesting results, and we'll crown a deserving champion by the time it's all said and done with our favorite beer here in the Parched Madness for 2026. Hope you've been having some fun with that. All right, we, of course, make sure you're locked in with us on social media. That's where you'll find those links as well. At Cherokee CP, at SJM Bets. Those are our handles there on Twitter. Of course, I always share it out on Facebook if you're friends with me there, if you can find me there. And then if you would like, subscribe, get the notifications here in the podcast, available on all the major platforms, including our host at Spotify and the YouTube channel. When we put out our picks videos, you can do that by going to search every day we're covering, like, subscribe, get the notifications there on that front as well for all of our picks throughout the year. All right, that's going to wind it down for us this time around. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.